Hi, I'm Julia Gomez.
And Sofia Molares.
And today we're going to analyze one of the greatest masterpieces of English literature,
Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen,
and its comparison with the film directed by Joseph Wright in 2005.
Firstly, we'll quickly talk about its plot. This story is set in rural England during the 19th century, and it describes the role that women had to play in society at the time. We are shown the challenges that the 5 sisters of the Bennet family have to encounter in the search of a husband who could assure them a future. For instance, we can find a love story between Jane, the eldest daughter, and Mr. Bingley, or the crazy attempts of the youngest ones to catch the attention of the officers. However, the main focus is on the turbulent relationship between Elizabeth Bennet, one of the sisters, and Fitzwilliam Darcy, a powerful and aristocratic landowner, and the evolution of this character from an apparently cold and proud man to a generous and loving husband in the end.
Now we will move on to the critical analysis and comparison between both the film and the book on which it's based. In general terms, we both agree that the visual adaptation is very loyal to the novel, and we can see this in that most of the dialogues in the film are borrowed directly from the text written by Jane Austen, and we can also see this faithfulness to the original version in that the succession of events and the chronology of them and also the plot are the same. And we were really surprised by this because normally visual adaptations are really poor and they lack of loyalty to the original text.
Nevertheless, we would like to highlight some subtle differences that we have perceived after reading the book and watching the movie. First of all, concerning the characters, there are some of them missing in the film, like Mrs. Hurst, one of the 2 Bingley sisters. In addition, another difference is the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, because in the novel we can read that he is no longer in love with his wife and he almost hates her, whereas in the film we can see how they still love each other.
It's important to remark that there is a much faster pace in the film than in the book, as Joseph Wright's main goal is to maintain the attention and the interest of the viewer. It is also important to say that there are no temporal references in the film, and so time is very condensed. The viewer may think that the action is developed in days or weeks, when actually in the novel we can see that the action takes place in months and even years. We found that the characters in the film were very well portrayed, although there was an exception, and this was Miss Darcy. This character is represented by Jane Austen as a very shy girl who almost never spoke, and we also know that she's taller than Lizzie. However, in the scene when they meet each other in the film, we can see that Lizzie is taller than her, and also that Miss Darcy acts very differently. She is a young, beaming and cheerful woman.
We have also noticed that they added some scenes that were not in the original version. For example, right before Lizzie meets Georgiana, the sister of Mr. Darcy, the Darcys catch Elizabeth spying on them by looking through a slit on the door while Georgiana is playing the piano. This is not the case in the novel, as they are formally introduced as soon as they enter the room. The climax of the story is a bit altered too. In the book, Mr. Bingley, Jane, Kitty, Darcy, and Lizzie go for a walk, and the proposal takes place after Elizabeth and Darcy are left alone. However, in the film, we can see Elizabeth sad and meditative in the middle of the field, all alone, when Darcy approaches and asks her if her feelings towards him have changed. It is after finding out that she loved him that he proposed for a second time. Finally, Lydia is not that important for the plot of the movie because the main attention is given to the 2 older sisters, Jane and Elizabeth, whereas in the book we are constantly updated by her letters, even after moving out with Wickham.
We will now concentrate on the staging of the movie. As we've said before, this story is set in rural England, and this is clearly reflected in the movie thanks to the houses and the landscapes that are shown. Also, there are different resources used to try and portray all the different detailed descriptions that the author included in the original text. Mainly, we can see that emotions and feelings are represented by weather and also colors. So, for instance, when Elizabeth, one of the main characters, is sad, the weather changes completely and we can find storm and rain, and also all the colors used are mainly dark tones such as grey or black. And however, when there are moments that we can find happiness, such as when Mr. Darcy gets to know Elizabeth's true feelings, we can see the sun starting to shine, and also we can see the appearance in screen of different warm tones such as yellow, orange, or even red.
The clothes used by the characters are also very meaningful as they correspond to their personalities. For instance, Mary, the middle Bennet sister, always wears black or grey dresses because she is described in the novel as alienated from the society. She doesn't fit in and she doesn't reach the expectations for a woman of her age, like playing the piano or drawing. She is also very shy, reserved, and not very talkative. In contrast, her two younger sisters, Kitty and Lydia, always wear vivid colors and eccentric dresses because they represent their personalities, a bit rude and with lack of manners. Finally, we would like to mention the use of music. The soundtrack corresponds to the period of time in which the story takes place, the 19th century, as it is mainly classical music, piano and violin. It is used to accentuate important moments for the development of the story, add tension, suspense, drama, and convey the feelings in a better way.
Now we will show you our favorite scene.
Mr. Darcy?
Miss Elizabeth?
So, our favorite scene does not appear in the book. This scene represents the exact moment when the Bennet sisters are leaving Mr. Bingley's house after spending some days there as Jane was sick. Firstly, we can see Jane, the older sister, stepping in the carriage and being helped by Mr. Bingley. This gesture is seen as proper from a gentleman, as she is wearing gloves. This is the main difference with her sister. Elizabeth will be the second to step in the carriage, and she will be helped by Mr. Darcy. However, she is not wearing gloves. This exact moment is very important for the plot, and we can find an extreme close-up when their hands touch, because we can find a gesture that is very romantic and not proper from a gentleman. Later, in the same scene, we find Mr. Darcy returning to Mr. Bingley's house, and we can find another close-up to his hand where he extends his fingers and closes his hand again to show that the gesture he's just done is a gesture proper from love and not proper from a gentleman.
We both love this passage because we can notice the extreme connection that they share in such a subtle and apparently meaningless gesture. It is a very romantic moment and also very important for the film. However, as we said before, in the book, this scene is not described in such a detailed way, as we only know that the sisters are coming back home with no allusions to a joint of hands.
To sum up, we think that both book and film are very similar and therefore great, but we do believe that we prefer the film over the book, as in the film, the relationship between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth is given much more importance than in the book, and also much more protagonism. Also, we prefer the faster pace that the film has, as sometimes when we were reading the book we found really long descriptions that made the story a bit difficult to follow. We would also like to add that we thought that the resources of weather and color to express the emotions of the characters are very useful and clever for us, as we do think that thanks to them, the viewer can really empathize and understand the feelings of the different characters.
We hope you liked our presentation and analysis of one of our favorite books by Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice.